I've been part of many Minecraft server communities in my life. I've played on all sorts of factions, roleplay, and RPG servers as a kid, dipped my toes into Stoneworks, and for the past 3 years, I've been running a variety of my own Minecraft servers with the help of mods, making everything ranging from fantasy RPGs to modern geopol servers to many, many social experiments. I've made small, private SMPs, and I've even ran a modded server of a couple hundred players, which is a lot for modded experience. But all of this is to say, I've learned what works, what doesn't, and what I want to do next. And for the past few months, along with a small team of developers, writers, and an already active small player base, I have been creating that project, my dream project, if you will. And, well, now all that's left to do is to start opening that up to all of you. So, taking from TTRPGs like Dungeons and Dragons, with some inspiration from MMORPGs, and of course, other servers such as Stoneworks, Civilization Events, I present to you Vassal is a low-fantasy MMORPG server with the focus of world building and roleplay, and in many ways is a successor to another project of mine, Fiefdom. With this server, though, I want to focus not only on just expanding the game mechanically, but refining and perfecting my world-building server method to provide what I would consider to be the most expansive and engaging world that I've ever laid out for people to play in. I've done this by taking more inspiration from MMOs and TTRPGs than just Minecraft servers, and I've laid out some very key details that will make Vassal my most immersive and enjoyable world yet. A world where the player's choices actually have a genuine impact on the arcs and stories of the server, and not just in the classic, way of, oh, you can do anything, that most world-building servers often try to advertise. Firstly, Vassal takes the pain of upkeeping, advertising, and running nations out of the player's hands, letting them delve way further into the stories that we present, as well as their own characters' personal stories. On all of the servers I've ran, I've found that despite technically giving the players more control over their stories with, the ability to make kingdoms and all those things, having to actually do all the work themselves for said kingdoms can actually be quite unenjoyable. As the most fun way to play mechanically, peacefully, and cooperative doesn't really line up with the most fun way to actually roleplay, which is more dramatically and with lots of conflicts. So rather than, bogging down players with geopolitics, logistics, instead, players will select from 3 kingdoms. Name, a matriarchal desert kingdom with some of the world's best mages and scholars. Andas, a quintessential medieval fantasy kingdom inspired by medieval France and Britain. And Langor, a cold Nordic kingdom with rising nationalism and conflicts. With all of these kingdoms being ran by NPCs, with unique storylines, motivations, and ideals. And of course, players still have plenty available to them, being able to create their own towns, guilds, and potentially even provinces within the kingdoms. But with these pre-made allegiances, players are automatically given not only a community, but access to unique storylines, server arcs, events, and gameplay, depending on the kingdom that they choose. Additionally, this also applies to guilds. Although we still allow players to make guilds of their own, we have created 4 unique guilds or factions that give players even more unique opportunities and storylines. Want to become an adventurer and learn about the newest dungeon crawls and combat events? Join the Adventurers Guild. Want to literally write history, see the world, and be a lore maker? Join the Observers. Want to become a criminal, bandit, or sort of bounty hunter? You can join Syndicate. Or if you want to fight for the sanctity of the world, destroying all which is unnatural, join the Paragons. Now, with all of these, I keep mentioning NPCs and storylines, so what's that all about? Well, to start, Vassal has a system to add NPCs with tons of depth and character, to a wide level of customization that you really never see in other servers. Rather than just relegating these NPCs to, important merchants or such like other servers might, they're integrated directly into the world and respond dynamically to your actions. If a couple players go off and found a town, perhaps some NPCs will move in to bulk out the population, maybe even opening up a branch of one of the guilds, or providing, establishments such as a tavern or a library, which will give players a great environment and setting to roleplay in. These NPCs can have their own dialogue, schedules, personalities, and some may even accompany the player for the right price. Additionally, there's also a vast array of other options for NPCs. Important characters that aren't actually played by a real person don't just have to be a figment of your imagination. They can be a real living character that exists within the world. The king of your nation isn't just some far-off imaginary concept. He is a real character which you might actually be able to just go visit. There's also plenty of room for other kinds of NPCs, things like bandits, custom enemies, and even bosses or villains to appear in Vassal's world. And all of these characters can change and evolve with the storylines and with the player's individual actions. As for these storylines themselves, Vassal is split into seasons, each lasting around a couple months, with each season nicely packaging the arcs for each kingdom, perhaps an arc for a guild, and of course a global arc spanning the entire continent and which all players, regardless of allegiance, can participate in. Each season is somewhat episodic, either following the events of the last season or starting something entirely new. But regardless, the start of a new season provides a perfect point for new players to join and returning players to jump right back in. Now, onto the experience itself. Of course, as I've said before, Vassal is set in a low fantasy world, providing the best possible mix of medieval realism and fantastical myths. Magic is rare. Races like the Dwemefolk, dwarves, and Fae, elves, are few and far between, and magical beasts like dragons or sea serpents are both scarce and powerful. Now, given that these fantastical races are rare in this setting, not everyone might get to be one, but having it be this special thing means that it will accentuate the work and care that you've put into your character even further. And of course, in a fantasy setting, even a low fantasy one, nothing can truly make a character feel more special and powerful than magic, and Vassal is no different. Vassal has an entirely custom magic system never seen before. Rather than just grinding out resources like in a traditional mod, magic is a heavily roleplay-centric system. You can gain the ability to perform magic either at birth, quote-unquote, or by going through the process of becoming the apprentice of another high-level mage, meaning that, yet again, it may not be something that everyone can or will do, but that rarity serves only to make the characters that use it even cooler, even better. And as for actually utilizing this magic, some aspects may be familiar, while others may be kind of new to you. The main tool of a mage is their casting item, which can be utilized much like rituals are in Stoneworks. By role-playing your big spell or ritual or whatever and using that item to call staff, which is on a large cooldown, the quote-unquote forces of magic can perform great acts that even complex traditional magic mods would just not be able to perform. Meaning that magic is more like a TTRPG like D&D than just a normal mod like Iron Spells. However, we also do have the ability to award players on-demand spells called cantrips, which can be used at any time without any staff necessary. These range from attacks like Firebolt and Lightning Bolt to healing and curing poisons to varying utility magics. And of course, with a setting that still does have its roots in medieval realism, we also have to focus on some elements of that realism. But not just for the sake of it. We are using realism as a way to add depth and skill to even Minecraft's most basic systems. Your classic medieval professions like farmers, blacksmiths, tavern keepers, and merchants, they're not just fun side content to mess with in between, generic progression, but rather they're now all backed by mechanically deep and interesting systems that make them genuinely meaningful. Smithing is entirely overhauled with the mod Overgeared, requiring that the player put in more material and time cost to making these basic tools, as well as adding an element of skill to the crafting of gear. There's a minigame with a varying difficulty depending on the material that you're working with and the item that you're crafting, and your success with this minigame determines how well that item actually performs. If you aren't very good at the minigame or using inferior smithing equipment, you might only be able to make mid-quality tools, but an experienced craftsman with the right setup can make something truly legendary. And of course, this doesn't just apply to smithing. Farming is overhauled, bringing in aspects of games like Stardew Valley, requiring care and attention to your crops and animals. Enchanting requires you to explore the world and for rare tomes to learn their secrets and apply them onto your own items, and then using a variety of magical materials to do so. Combat is almost Souls-like, with weight, timings, and skill behind it. And now there's hundreds of different weapons and armors for you to pick from to perfectly fit your fighting style. Even a basic mechanic like leveling is enhanced, as now your tools and armor will level with you, not only making your work even more meaningful, but providing an in-world way for characters to create their very own mythical weapons. But of course, to truly add depth to these systems, we can't just take Minecraft's basic and boring mechanics. Instead, we've chosen to implement some stakes and difficulty into the game in ways that you'd see in real life. Food now spoils after a real-life day, meaning that farmers and cooks have a meaningful place in society. Food can't just be stockpiled indefinitely. You need a continuous supply, and one good enough to feed a large group. Materials such as diamond and netherite have been limited, no longer being able to make tools and armor, with the new, best tier being steel. And further still, nearly all vanilla-style armor sets are removed, replaced with hundreds of different accurate medieval armor sets of the time. And, of course, to accent this realism, players are only given 5 respawns before their character is permanently gone. However, you're not removed from the server entirely like in a hardcore situation. Rather, you're given a chance to create a new character and tell a new story, much like in D&D when losing a character. We spent a lot of time balancing this amount, and we think that what it is now gives enough leeway for less skilled players to still, keep and enjoy their characters, but not removing what makes a character's life meaningful. All the best stories need a proper ending. And, well, all that's left now is to say how you can join. To make sure that we're cultivating the best possible community and experience for all of our players, we have an application process. However, it's quick, it's helpful to get you thinking about the server, and we as staff will do our best to process them as quickly as possible. This process helps to weed out problem players, trolls, and anyone who just generally might make the server a less safe and enjoyable place for others. But it also helps to specifically cultivate a community of people that want to be there, and people who genuinely care about roleplay, the story, and their and others' characters. And speaking of characters, new to this server, we've split character creation into another little form that's, again, easy and quick to fill out. It helps you to create a character that fits nicely into the setting, but also allows staff to give players so much better feedback. So rather than just denying you entirely, you can work with staff to make your character perfect, much like, again, D&D. And, of course, all this is done on our Discord server. We have places for all sorts of discussion about the server, places for each person in each kingdom and faction to discuss, and an entire wiki-like system set up. Just one click, and you have access to everything about Vassal that you could possibly need. No joining tons of small servers. So, if any of this interests you, join the Discord linked below and put in your application. Vassal is waiting for you.